Hey everyone, welcome back to the Incredible India podcast series. I'm Sam, and with me, as always, is the brilliant Taylor.
Hey, Sam. So today we're undertaking a deep dive into the source material around a really pivotal moment.
Yeah.
We're talking about Vasco da Gama arriving at Calicut, that's modern Kozhikode, back in 1498.
Right, 1498. And we're not just, sticking a pin in a map here. We really want to unpack how this city, Calicut, was already a massive global center way before he arrived, and how spices became, well, you called it the gunpowder of empire. What did that first contact actually feel like?
Exactly. It's about understanding the power dynamics already in play. The 15th century wasn't just Europe waking up. So yeah, that's the mission. We've looked at sources detailing the spice route, the ruler there, the Zomorin, the immediate culture clash, which is fascinating.
And the legacy, right? What still lingers today?
And the legacy definitely still defines Calicut, Kozhikode today.
Okay, so let's set the stage first. Calicut itself, before 1498, the sources paint a picture of somewhere incredibly sophisticated.
Oh, absolutely. What's really striking is that Calicut wasn't just becoming global. It was global centuries before Da Gama. Think of it as like the absolute jewel of the Malabar coast, the main hub for the spice route.
Wow, centuries.
Yeah. Harbor was this constantly busy international theater. We see records showing merchants pouring in. We're talking Arabia, Persia, East Africa, and crucially China, too, long before the Europeans were focused this way.
And trading what? Just spices?
Spices were huge, obviously, but everything else, too. Silk, porcelain from China, incense, gems, you name it. It was a massive import-export hub.
Okay, so that paints a picture of serious wealth, serious connections. But let's talk about spices. We always hear they were valuable, but can you give us a sense of how valuable pepper as black gold? Is that just a saying?
No, not just a saying. It really drills down to economics and, honestly, necessity, especially in Europe. Spices were the ultimate luxury good back then, but they had really practical uses, too. Take black pepper or black gold wasn't hyperbole. It was hoarded in treasuries, literally used like currency sometimes.
Why, though? Just for flavor.
Well, flavor was part of it, but think preservation. You've got long European winters, no refrigeration. How do you keep meat edible? Spices like pepper, cloves, nutmeg, they were vital for curing and preserving food supplies. It was almost a matter of survival for communities.
Okay. So less about making a steak taste good, more about making sure you had meat through the winter.
Precisely. And then you've got things like cinnamon and cardamom. Hugely prized, yes, for food, but just as much for medicine. I mean, in a world without modern pharmaceuticals, these were seen as having real health benefits. That drove demand way up.
Right, so controlling the source, controlling that route, that's where the power lay.
Exactly. That's why finding a direct sea route was the holy grail for nations like Portugal.
And sitting at the heart of this existing network in Calicut was the local ruler?
Yes, the Zomorin. It's important to know, Zomorin wasn't a name, it was the title, the hereditary ruler of Calicut, a Hindu king. And his court, highly cosmopolitan, used to dealing with everyone, Muslim traders, Jewish merchants, various Hindu groups.
So welcoming to foreigners.
Very welcoming, known for generosity, actually, but also incredibly pragmatic. He understood that this diversity, this trade, was the source of his city's power and wealth. He wasn't naive.
Okay, so that's the world Vasco da Gama sails into in 1498. The sources describe this scene, don't they? 3 ships, battered from the journey, crew suffering from scurvy.
Yeah, finally sighting land after that incredibly rough voyage around Africa. Da Gama thinks he's arriving to, perhaps, impress a local chieftain. He's basically knocking on the door of what was already one of the busiest, most sophisticated trading centers on the planet. He just didn't realize the scale.
And the Zomorin's reaction?
Well, initially he extends his usual hospitality. He's used to delegations from powerful kingdoms, right? But this is where the culture clash, the misunderstanding, really hits home. It comes down to the gifts.
Ah, the gifts. The Portuguese thought they'd brought impressive stuff.
They really did. They offered things like coral beads, some bolts of fairly cheap striped cloth, hats, wash basins, trinkets, really. The things they thought would dazzle an oriental ruler.
But in Calicut.
In Calicut. A market overflowing with high-quality silks, ivory, gemstones, pearls. These gifts weren't just unimpressive, they were, frankly, laughable. It showed a complete lack of understanding of the local economy and status, like offering, I don't know, plastic beads for a diamond.
Yeah, I can see how that would land poorly. And the Zomorin called them out on it, didn't he? There's that famous quote.
There is. He's recorded, through interpreters obviously, asking something like, "If you our merchants come to trade, Where are your valuable presents? Where is the gold and silver worthy of a king?
Oof, that cuts right to the heart of it.
It really does. It just perfectly encapsulates that massive disconnect in expectations and perceived value. And beneath this awkward gift exchange, there's serious politics brewing too.
You mean the existing traders?
Exactly. The long-established Arab traders,
Yeah.
especially the Mapila Muslim community, who were incredibly influential and wealthy there, they instantly saw the Portuguese not just as competitors, but as a real threat to their livelihood and their, dominance of the sea lanes.
And they had the Zomorin's ear.
Absolutely. They were deeply integrated into Calicut's power structure. So the sources talk about whispers at court. They were advising the Zomorin, highlighting the Portuguese potential for disruption, maybe even their aggression. This definitely shaped how those first negotiations went.
So da Gama sails back to Lisbon. Not much cargo, maybe some spices, but the real prize was the knowledge.
Immense knowledge. He had the route. He knew the way around Africa, directly to the source of the spices. And he'd seen the incredible wealth firsthand. That information was, well, explosive back in Europe.
And that's the turning point, from just finding a route to actively trying to control it.
Precisely. Because finding that sea route completely changed the economics of the spice trade. It was revolutionary. Think about it. The old overland route involved multiple middlemen Arabs, Venetians, others. Each one added a huge markup.
So pepper was incredibly expensive by the time it got to, say, Lisbon.
Astronomical. Sources suggest markups could easily exceed 1,000%. The sea route slashed that. Suddenly, Portugal could undercut everyone. They could potentially monopolize the European spice market, turning it from a luxury into a state-controlled commodity.
Which meant the old players wouldn't just step aside quietly.
Not a chance. They couldn't compete on price anymore. So the Portuguese strategy had to shift. It became about force.
Enter the cannons.
Enter the cannons. When the Portuguese ships returned, they weren't just carrying trade goods. They were heavily armed warships. Their whole strategy, the Estado da India, was built on controlling the sea lanes through naval power. Building forts, seizing rival ships, using violence to enforce trade terms.
So diplomacy basically went out the window pretty quickly.
Almost immediately. They started building forts along the coast, often playing local rulers against each other. They allied with Cochin, for instance, a rival of Calicut. It became about establishing armed control points, not just participating in the existing trade network.
But Calicut, the Zomorin, they didn't just roll over, did they? The sources mention resistance.
Oh, definitely not. Calicut put up a fierce fight. For decades, well into the 16th century, there was consistent conflict. The Zomorin often allied with the Mapila traders and their naval forces. They used smaller, faster boats, sort of guerrilla tactics at sea, to harass the bigger, slower Portuguese ships.
So Calicut remained a thorn in Portugal's side for a long time.
A major one. While the Portuguese eventually shifted their main base to Goa, which was more defensible, Calicut's resistance really hampered their initial plans for total dominance of the Malabar coast. It showed that this wasn't an easy conquest.
Okay, so let's jump forward. 5 centuries later, what's the legacy of all this in Kozhikode today? Can you still feel that history?
You really can. It's layered, of course. Calicut, Kozhikode did eventually face some political decline as powers shifted, but the cultural imprint of those centuries, both the pre-Portuguese global connections and the clash with Europe, it's still very much alive.
How so? If someone visits today, what should they look for?
Well, you can literally walk through the old spice markets like Curitiba. Pepper, cardamom, cloves, they're still traded. But more than that, you see the people, particularly the continuity of the Mapila community. That deep-rooted connection to the Arab world is still visible.
It's like stepping back into that trading world, in a way.
In a way, yes. And you could visit places associated with Zomorin's history, learn about that defiance. Calicut Beach itself, standing there thinking about those first European sails appearing on the horizon. It's quite evocative.
And the food, you mentioned the cultural fusion there.
Oh, absolutely. The food is maybe one of the most delicious legacies. Mopla cuisine, specifically. It's this incredible blend of local Malabar traditions and Arab influences. Think about the famous Malabar biryani, the spices, the cooking techniques. It tells that story of centuries of exchange.
So the history isn't just in buildings, it's on the plate too.
Exactly. Those flavors, those ingredients that came on ships long ago, they became part of the local identity. It survived the whole colonial disruption.
So really, when we look back at Calicut in 1498, it forces us to rethink that narrative of European discovery, doesn't it?
Completely. India, or at least this part of India, wasn't waiting to be discovered. It was a powerful, sophisticated player on a global stage already. What happened in 1498 wasn't discovery, it was an interruption. An armed, ambitious new rival forcing its way into an existing complex system.
A moment that really shifted global trade from perhaps a more diverse network towards one increasingly dominated by European maritime power, backed by force.
Precisely. It kicked off a new era, and Calicut was right at the center of that initial turbulent collision. It's a story of resilience, of old worlds meeting new ambitions, and you can still feel those echoes today.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, if you decide to travel to Calicut or elsewhere in India after hearing this, we do have a recommendation. Five Senses Tours organizes tours across India, which are designed to be really immersive cultural experiences. You can email them at contact@fivesensestours.com. That's the numeral 5, so contact at fivesensestours.com. Or you can reach them on WhatsApp at +919 845 677 446.